This 2024 AFC North Season Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to Brown downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, August the 13th, here to get into our next NFL division for our season player props. Today, we'll be discussing, in my opinion, maybe a lot of others' opinions, probably the best division in football, the AFC North, at least certainly the most competitive as far as the four teams that are in this division. We'll briefly discuss the division, of course, give you our season player props for this AFC North division. Definitely looking forward to this one. And if you haven't already, went back and listened to the first two divisions that we've already done for the upcoming NFL season. Make sure you guys do so. Still plenty of time to do that, to get to those two divisions. But joining me here to help me break everything down happening for the AFC North division, I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up, excited to be here as always, man. Excited to jump into another division. I also agree with you, you said the AFC North is pretty difficult division. I agree. We see a lot of mediocrity in some of these divisions from all four teams. There's a lot of up and down, Jekyll and Hyde, but this division is always pretty tough, always difficult to pinpoint who has that the slightest of edges and can make the playoffs and always some Super Bowl or bust aspirations from this division as well. So I'm excited to jump into the AFC North with you. Let's do it.
Yeah, look, last season it was the Baltimore Ravens that were supposed to be, I think, the ones that got to the Super Bowl. Just fell short against the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And I know the Zay Flowers fumble had a lot to do with it, and maybe the game plan exactly wasn't the greatest for Todd Monken and the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, when you had Lamar Jackson, the MVP of the league last year, as your quarterback, and who had a phenomenal season, just fell a little bit short. And again, for this Baltimore Ravens team, they are certainly, I think, worthy of being one of the favorites to hoist the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season, but it just haven't been able to get over that hump thus far yet. We'll see if that transpires this season for the Baltimore Ravens. And look, last season, Chris, all four teams in this division had a winning record. Even the Cincinnati Bengals, who were sitting at 9-8, had a winning record. Then that was without Joe Burrow for much of the season. And to take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals, who finished 9-8, they were only 1-5 in the division last year, which is, I think, kind of perplexing to me. And they weren't very good in the conference either. They were only 4-8 in that conference last year, but they do get Joe Burrow back. I'm sure we'll have more conversation about that Cincinnati Bengals team when we get to our player props here. But it just almost feels like every single year, Chris, that all four of these teams drastically, or not, I don't say drastically, but make things to bolster the roster, to improve the roster. I think the case in point for this division, I think that conversation, at least this season, probably, starts with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Because of the quarterback change that they do have there, bringing in Russell Wilson, who didn't live up to expectations with the Denver Broncos and that fiasco. They also bring in Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears. They decided to move on from him after drafting Caleb Williams, number 1 overall in this past draft. And we know that the Baltimore Ravens also picked up Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans to, bolster that backfield that's been decimated by injuries over the past several seasons. So just in totality here, kind of pulling back the curtain here, Chris, What have you kind of seen, at least from this division? We mentioned that it's the most competitive. I mean, just these four teams are just neck and neck. I mean, they were just separated by 1 to 2 games up and down in this division last year. And honestly, frankly, I'm expecting more of that this upcoming season here, Chris.
Yeah, same. I definitely agree with that. If I don't think that there's too much of, what we've seen, like there's not too much of a mix up. If anything, we can never foresee like the injuries and what's going to happen, but you would think Cincinnati would take a step up. I know we'll talk a little bit. Cincinnati would take a step up, being that Joe Burrow's back, and he still has all his shiny weapons outside of Tyler Boyd, but they did draft a wide receiver to take over his spot. No Joe Mixon, but we'll see how that goes. But
yeah,
Baltimore is still a well-oiled machine. They still got Harbaugh there. You still got Lamar there, and I think this is second year of his contract. And they had some really high expectations last year and just kind of fell short to the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. We always go back to Patrick Mahomes, but with the Cleveland Browns, I'm pretty sure we'll discuss them a little bit more in depth as well. But can they get some consistent quarterback play for Deshaun Watson? Because this team was so good last year. I know we talked about earlier on one of our episodes, we talked about how that defense didn't travel all the time and they were a lot of overs on the road, but the defensive unit was so good. That secondary was amazing. Just pass rush, having the defensive player of the year on their team like that. It was a really, really good team. And then you always got old Pittsburgh in there. Tomlin in his 17th year. I think Arthur Smith coming over to be the offensive coordinator from Atlanta. So it's gonna be interesting to see, man. It's gonna be fun to kind of watch this division play out. I got a couple thoughts that I want to share and a couple plays, and excited to do that. What's your biggest takeaway? What do you think about the division?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's just what I mentioned earlier. It's like all four of these teams, I think, have a shot to win this division. I know Pittsburgh, I think, is the wild card right here, right? And again, if you take a look at their schedule in the back half of the year, I think they play all their division games in the second half of the year after their bye week, which I think is going to be very, very tough for them. I think they also have games against the Eagles and the Chiefs in that second half of the year. And again, like you mentioned, with Mike Tomlin entering his 17th year now, they haven't had a losing record in his tenure as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we'll see if that's gonna if that streak is gonna stay alive here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we know that's been the conversation about this Pittsburgh Steelers team, is that they haven't had a losing record with Mike Tomlin as the head coach there. But now you bring in, like I mentioned, Russell Wilson, who's slated to be the starting quarterback for this team week 1. And if he doesn't have a great start to the season come week 4, week 5, maybe there's going to be a change there now with Justin Fields as the backup there as well, who I thought was pretty good last season, especially in the second half of the year for the Chicago Bears. So, obviously, like you mentioned, with Joe Burrow coming back for this Bengals team, I know there's some contract stuff going on with the wide receiving group there. Jamar Chase, I believe, still holding out, wanting a new contract, and T. Higgins had to sign the franchise tag. Like you mentioned, no more Tyler Boyd, no more Joe Mixon there as well. So, they drafted another wide receiver in this last draft. Chase Brown supposed to be is either from the depth chart. What I saw right now is that they have Zach Moss listed as the starting running back for the Cincinnati Bengals team. So, I think that it's just going to really come down to how these teams play against each other in those division games. And I think that, honestly, it sounds cliched, but I think whichever team is the healthiest at the end of the season is probably going to win this division, right? It's just because you can make a case, honestly, for any of these four teams here in the AFC North. But, Chris, before we do get into the actual player props here, and we'll extend that conversation into what do we think about these teams for the upcoming year. Let me tell everyone about the Sports Gambling Podcast, as they have launched their 32 team preview for the upcoming season. They're giving away. They're in a very, very, very giving mood when it comes to the NFL season, and rightfully so, because everybody's excited. But they're giving out a $500 Circa Futures for listeners, plus the EPL returns. So make sure to check out the Soccer Gambling Podcast and the EPL Gambling Podcast for all your footy fix. I'm definitely excited for the EPL season. I've really gotten myself into the EPL across the pond, so make sure you guys check out Malcolm and Boz, and also the Soccer Gambling Podcast there with Billy. And make sure you guys subscribe wherever you do get your podcast and the SGPN app. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here. Let's get into our player props here for this AFC North division. You want to lead us off?
Yes, sir. Let's do it. I'm going to Cincy. If I'm gonna just go right, just dive right into it. And we're going Joe Burrow. I'm going over on his passing touchdowns. And the number's 27.5. Not too juice. -115 is the best number that I can find. In my opinion, and I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on Joe Burrow. We just need him to stay healthy. After he threw 34 touchdowns and then 35 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons, 2 years ago, he went down with that wrist injury last season, held him to just 10 games. In those 10 games, he still managed 15 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. I like this because Burrow gets, like we talked about it already, he gets his full cast of wide receivers besides Tyler Boyd, which, like I said, I think they did a pretty good job of replacing him with Jermaine Burton from Alabama, a big-time wide receiver from Alabama, coming in to replace him. Still got Jamar Chase, still got T. Higgins, and that crew, I think they'll be ready. Joe Mixon being gone, I think that could also lead to them passing the ball just a tad bit more. One thing I thought was pretty interesting, is the Bengals, they play the sixth easiest schedule, but they also lost DJ Reader on the defensive side of the ball. Cincinnati was the number one run defense in the league when he was on the field. They dropped all the way to last when he was off. So if they can't replace him, that's going to be a lot of Joe Burrow just going out there slinging it. I mean, I think if he can stay healthy, I feel like we're getting a major, major discount here. Because 32, 33 touchdowns, like him going over this with, 4 or 5 weeks left, wouldn't surprise me at all, just because of like I said, you just need him to stay healthy, just because of the weapons that he has, probably got a chip on his shoulder after feeling like, he's always the guy that's being injured as well. So if they can keep him upright, which, that can be challenging at times. We know how bad that Cincinnati Bengals offensive line can be, especially with pass protecting. If they can do that, though, I do think that helps a lot. I think the defense struggles to fill that void without having Reader there. And that could also just lead to Burrow having to be a gunslinger, which he absolutely is. So I'll take Joe Burrow. If I think we're getting a discount here, I'll take him over 27.5 passing touchdowns to start the thing off.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you mentioned, right? The 2 seasons that he was healthy, 21 season and 22 season, threw for close to 4,500 yards, in the 2022 season was 25 yards short, went over it in 2021. But more important, like you mentioned there, Chris, the touchdowns, 34 passing touchdowns, 35 passing touchdowns. Last season in 10 games, 15 passing touchdowns. So we know, like you mentioned, like they have the weapons at the wide receiving group, but also I think they have guys. I know Joe Mixon's gone now, but when I was kind of going back and look at the numbers, like they like to get the running backs involved in the passing game as well. Whether that is going to be Chase Brown or whether it is going to be Zach Moss, I think they'll find a way to get those guys involved in the passing game as well. They also picked up Mike Gesicki at the tight end position as well. Did the Cincinnati Bengals. And what you mentioned about DJ Reader, I think he went over to the Detroit Lions. They tried to replace him with Sheldon Rankins. We'll see if that's going to pan out for the Cincinnati Bengals team or not. But again, this might be a team, Chris, that we could see in shootouts if that defense doesn't hold up. Especially in that front seven, because they lost DJ Reader, who was one of the best, like you mentioned, when it came to stopping the run there. So yeah, again, it's if he's going to play 15 of the 17 games, he clears this number. There's no question about it. And again, coming off of the injury, and let's not forget, right, it was the wrist injury as well, but he also was dealing with a calf injury last year as well, coming into training camp and for the season as well. So hopefully that's, all that is past him. And he's able to stay healthy and just go out and play football and put up the numbers that he did when he played those full 16-game schedules for this Cincinnati Bengals team, and just absolutely crushed that number of 27.5. So I can only get behind this for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals over on his passing touchdowns. I'll take you over to my first player prop here. I have 2 quarterback props, and I'll go with the first one here. I'm going to go over to the Cleveland Browns quarterback, Deshaun Watson. And I feel like this passing yards number was a little bit inflated for him. That number right now is at 3,350.5 passing yards. And if you see a better number on that under, Chris, let me know. But so let's start with Deshaun Watson, and we saw the stuff, and I know as a Texans fan that all the stuff that was going on off the field with him, it seems like that's in the past now. But he also was dealing with injury, right? The shoulder injury. And I think anytime I see quarterbacks coming off a shoulder injury, it does give me a little bit of a pause. And I think you also take a look at the depth chart at the quarterback room for the Cleveland Browns. They have some great insurance policies. Everybody's favorite backup quarterback, Jameis Winston, is there. They also have Tyler Huntley back there as well, who was with the Baltimore Ravens as the third guy there. I believe I'll double check that. But I think for Deshaun Watson, he just wasn't playing well when he was out there last season. I know when he was healthy with the Texans, he absolutely crushed his numbers. But I feel like this is going to be more of a team what we saw last year, where they were absolutely defensive minded and led by their defense. I think there'll be more lower scoring games. And we know that, especially being in Cleveland, that weather is always a factor in Cleveland, whether it's raining, whether it's windy, whatever the case might be. And I think that's only going to take away from Deshaun Watson throwing the football, at least in those home games. Those are 8 to 9. I think it's 8 home games this year for the AFC. And let's not forget, you're getting Nick Chubb back. Yes, I know he's coming off of a gruesome knee injury, but this guy is in a league of his own. He's a freak of a nature, and I expect Nick Chubb to be, maybe it'll take him a week 1 or week 2 to kind of get some of that rust off, but I expect him to, again, be the bell cow again for this Cleveland Browns team. And also, Jerome Ford last year, he stepped in very nicely into the place of Nick Chubb, who went down with the injury last year. So I just think this number was a little bit inflated here for Deshaun Watson. Yes, I know they picked up Jerry Jeudy. They still have Amari Cooper out there as well. But I think this team is more defensive minded right now because they were one of the best defenses, if not the best defense last year. From a yards allowed perspective, at least at home. And we talked a lot about how they were not very good on the road. But I think with Myles Garrett there, I think this will be a more of a defensive minded team. Probably won't need Deshaun Watson to throw the football all over the field. And again, if he's having a couple bad games, I don't think that Kevin Stefanski may think twice to maybe bench him, especially with, I know, again, it sounds crazy with all the money that they did pay him, but if he's not playing well, they're not winning games. With Jameis Winston back there, I don't think they'll be afraid to make that move. So I'm going under right now, 3,350 and a half passing yards for Deshaun Watson here, Chris.
Love it, That's why you keep cashing them bets all the time. I absolutely love this one. I was trying to figure out which receiver I wanted to fade, Like I mean, you kind of, like you mentioned, you got Jeudy coming over from Denver.
Mm-hmm.
You still got Amari Cooper, who, I was reading, just kind of taking a deep dive, and they changed quarterbacks 11 times last year. Not 11 different quarterbacks, but 11 times they had to change quarterbacks because of the injuries and just the poor performances. And they still end up getting to the playoffs. And I think that's just a testament to, head coach doing this job and keeping the guys ready, keeping the next guy ready. I'm just not ready to buy on Deshaun Watson yet. If you mentioned the weather, which was something that I didn't even think about, but it's always nasty and it's always either raining really hard or snowing or really windy. And the numbers kind of go back and support that as well. You look at down the distance tendencies. The Cleveland Browns last season had a 41.9% pass rate on first down. That was in the bottom half of the league. They also had a 57.5% pass rate on second down, which was actually the 7th lowest. So this is a team, like you mentioned, in third down, they were also bottom 10 as well in third down pass rate, because this was a team, like you said, that really relied on pounding the rock and keeping your defense on the field. And I don't think that we see anything different. 33.5 is the number that I see as well. Like I said, I know Amari Cooper had 1,000 yards receiving last season, even though he, was fluctuating with quarterbacks, and Njoku broke out as well. I was thinking about, ways to either play on him or fade him as well. But this makes a ton of sense, I think I'm tailing you on this because love the breakdown, and it just makes a lot of sense. I don't think that Deshaun Watson, and there's also like how in a division that we expect to be so competitive, how can you as a head coach sit through watching Deshaun Watson struggle and hold your team back if that case presents itself again, like it did last year? So I'm right on board with you. I'm gonna lock in Deshaun Watson as well, under 33 and 100, under 3,300 and a half, 3,350 and a half passing yards here.
Yeah, and also going back to what you made the point about their wide receiving group. Let's not forget David Njoku was absolutely incredible for this team last year as well, right? They added Jerry Jeudy, like we talked about, and I know Elijah Moore hasn't I think lived up to expectations yet, but I think that there is probably a room here to fade one of these skill position players when it comes to the receiving group here for the Cleveland Browns here. So we'll definitely be obviously keeping our eyes out for this team. And again, you take a look at that quarterback room. Let's not even forget DTR is back there as well as a fourth guy right now. So it's Watson, it's Jameis Winston, it's Tyler Huntley, and it's DTR for this Cleveland Browns quarterback room for this upcoming season. All right, Chris, before we get over to the next player props here for the AFC North division, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you go 8-0, you could win 325 extra entry with Underdog Fantasy. Or play fantasy football the right way with Best Ball. Best Ball Mania is live with 15 million in prizes. And Underdog just launched their season-long college football projections. Higher and lower for your favorite college football players. You can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. All right, Chris, let's get over to our next player props in this division. Where are you taking us?
I went double quarterback here, so I got another QB I'm looking at, and that QB is going to be Lamar Jackson. I'm going over on his rushing yards. Number 675.
That's mine too. Love it.
Number 675. And it was difficult. I know we try to do, one quarterback and, a couple skill positions, but it's difficult not to lock this one in, man. Lamar, outside of, having going over this number in 6 straight years, I had to do a double take. I saw 675 and I'm like, he's going over this in 6 straight years. And even in 21 and 22, when he only played 12 games apiece, like last season, he ran the ball for 148 times, 821 yards on 5.5 yards per carry. And I understand, I do get it that you're bringing in Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry carried the ball 280 times. I mean, pretty much every single time he was on the field, he carried the ball, ran for over 1,100 yards. But Gus Edwards is now gone. Keontae Mitchell is still on the IR. Justin Hill is pretty much the only backup behind Derrick Henry, barring any kind of injury. Hope, knock on wood, hopefully they can stay healthy. But this to me just screams Lamar Jackson. I can't take the under here, and it was too good of a number where I feel like we still get value here, and Lamar Jackson can run for 700 yards. Last thing I want to mention is 3 of the starters from that offensive line are no longer there. They moved on. Right. So you bring in 3 more linemen, which could create a little bit of, malfunction, which also could potentially lead to some, breakdown and Lamar having to, make plays with his legs a little bit more than he has in the past. So I also just don't like the receiving core that much. If you lose Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers now, sophomore year goes to number 1. Like, I don't know, if it was just a little too low for me not to like all of those things. Like, it's like the perfect formula in my opinion. All of those things like really, really, make me want to buy on Lamar Jackson here. So I'll take his over 675 and a half rushing yards here.
All to the fact that he shed 25 pounds this offseason, did Lamar Jackson. And I know last year that obviously we won MVP, that maybe they had him add that weight to absorb some of the hits that he would take as a running quarterback. But now, with him shedding 25 pounds, giving him a little bit more agility, I think watching him and Derrick Henry in that backfield running that read option is going to be a lot of fun. And it's not like we're asking him to do something monumental, like going out there and running for 800, 900,000 yards, which he's done in his career. And like, I had the same reaction as you when I saw this number at 675 and a half, that he's done it in 5-6 straight seasons. And even in the shortened years, like you mentioned, that where he was hurt, he had already eclipsed this number here. So I think that, again, when we talk about these running quarterbacks, you try to do, I know the game plan is for these coordinators that you want to protect them from taking those hits that can be, I don't want to say deadly, but can cause injury and have these guys miss significant time. But I mean, Lamar Jackson's best attribute and skill is his ability, that escapability, and making plays with his legs, what I think has made him successful as an NFL quarterback and has given the Baltimore Ravens success in the regular season. And I think, and I keep on going back to this when they played the Chiefs last year, Chris, for a chance to get to the Super Bowl, that I don't think that game plan was correct for the Baltimore Ravens, where I thought they would utilize their running ability, whether it was with their running backs or whether it was with Lamar Jackson, right? So, I mean, you read off the numbers beautifully. I'm not going to, regurgitate everything, but I'm glad that we agreed on this one for Lamar Jackson. And let's also not forget, like you mentioned, about that backfield. Yes, they added Derrick Henry, but you mentioned the name Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, another one that they had a lot of high hope for, just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He now also goes over to the LA Chargers there as well. And Keontae Mitchell, who was absolutely fantastic last season down the stretch in the second half of the year for this team. Like you mentioned, he's still on the IR. He's still recovering from the knee injury there as well. So I think a lot of these yards from Lamar Jackson may just come early in the season, where we probably, hopefully, by the midway point of the season, where we go back and kind of revisit him, that he's already eclipsed his number for the Baltimore Ravens. And it's just adding one more thing. I do have a player prop for a wide receiver here. I think you're 100% correct about that wide receiver room, that it hasn't been the most successful or daunting, or maybe gives opposing defensive coordinators nightmares. Maybe it's not like this Cincinnati Bengals at all. But I think that this team has always just been built on being run first. And I think that now adding Derrick Henry and having Lamar Jackson, I think just kind of just puts that nail in the coffin for this upcoming season here. Not saying that Lamar won't throw, because he did still throw for over 3,600 passing yards last season, but it's just been different guys that have stepped up for that offense for this Baltimore Ravens team. So yeah, both Chris and I on the over rushing yards for Lamar Jackson, 675.5 for Mr. Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP. So agreement there. Chris, let's go over to player prop number 3, man. What do you got?
We're going to stay in that backfield, and we talked about this one last week. Got to go Derrick Henry, over these 10.5 touchdowns. This is actually still minus 110. And, we just barring any kind of injury with this one as well. Gus Edwards, of course, was the lead back in this offense last season. If he ran for just 810 yards, he had almost 200 carries, slightly under 198. And he had 13 touchdowns. 13 touchdowns. We're just asking for Derrick Henry to get 11. I think Derrick Henry is a tad bit better than Gus Edwards, even at this age in his career. And Derrick Henry also had 12 touchdowns last season. I mentioned he had 280 rushing, 280 carries in Tennessee. And here's the thing, Derrick Henry's had 10 or more. We talked about this already. He's had 10 or more touchdowns in 6 straight seasons. Yep. And although Baltimore did lose those 3 offensive linemen that I talked about earlier when I was giving out Lamar Jackson to go over, he'll be running behind a much better offensive line than that of Tennessee that he ran against last year. So I went in and looked at some of the numbers. Tennessee actually ranked 26 in offensive yards per play and offensive points per drive. The Tennessee Titans offensive line ranked 21st in ESPN's run block rate, and they were 28th in yards created before contact for their running backs. Now, when you flip that and you talk about getting into this Ravens system that dominates on the ground, the Ravens rank 4th in offensive yards per play, 6th in offensive points per drive. Baltimore's offensive line ranked 5th in run block rate and 6th in yards created for their running backs before contact last season. So Gus Edwards, he had 26 of the 53 goal-to-goal carries for the Ravens last season. He had the call on 22 of the Ravens' 34 carries inside the 5-yard line as well last season. The Ravens ranked 6th in rush success in the red zone efficiency last season. I mean, teams are going to know what's coming. Just what are you going to be able to do about it when you think about the offensive line? When you think about something that you pointed out, the option play, right? Is it going up the middle to Derrick Henry, or is Lamar Jackson going to bounce it outside, right? So I mean, it creates a lot of head scratching defensive coordinators just
It's gonna
really
give him nightmares.
yeah, it's nightmares, of trying to figure out what you want to give up. Who do you want to score the football? And I do think all of those things taken into consideration, Derrick Henry gets, 12, 13, 14 touchdowns this year,
Yeah, look, and Derrick Henry has, for the most part, I mean, not most part, has been healthy throughout his career. Whether, with the Tennessee Titans, obviously, there's only one season back in 2021 where he played 8 games, but last season played in all 17. 2022 played 16 of the 17. 2020 16, 15, 16, 16, 15. So, we know that he's a workhorse, and the attempts last year for Derrick Henry were a little bit down from what we're used to, because we were seeing him walk into 300 attempts per game, per season. When he was with the Titans. So we'll see how they utilize him. Also, to know fact, maybe this means something, maybe it doesn't, but Derrick Henry, 10 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns away from 100 for his career. So again, this will probably be a season where if he does get to 11, that he'll have 100 plus rushing touchdowns for his career. So yeah, definitely love Derrick Henry here. Again, a guy that's done it for 6-7 straight seasons, just getting those touchdowns. And again, just watching him and Lamar in the backfield with that read option is going to be a lot of fun if you're a Ravens fan for this upcoming season. All right, Chris, before I get over to my next player prop for the AFC North, let me tell everybody, our friends over at Rhythm. Football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model, or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. The Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. So claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also here to let you guys know about the best handicapping contest and survivor contest happening over at the Circa Sportsbook in Las Vegas. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win the Office Survivor pool, but you didn't enter the Circa Survivor. And if you don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas just yet before football, Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go hang out with Sean and Ryan and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world from August 22nd through the August 24th. Use promo code SGP15, that's SGP15, to save 15% off on your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And make sure you guys sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save $50 with promo code SGP. Again, proxy.footballcontest.com to save yourself $50 with promo code SGP. All right, Chris, let me get over to my last player prop here for this division. And I'm staying on the Baltimore Ravens side. And we talked about, right, some of the wide receivers that are not, up to par with some of the ones in the division, right? I think if you made a rankings of 1 to 10, it's probably only one wide receiver from the Baltimore Ravens that is on that top 10 list in this division. So I'm going to fade Rashad Bateman. His number's at 550.5 receiving yards. And it's just a fact that you take a look at his numbers, number one, throughout his career, when he's been with the Baltimore Ravens, he hasn't eclipsed this number. And it's low for a reason, right? But we just talked at volumes about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, what that offense we think is going to look like. But the things that I've read out of the training camp and the practices that the Baltimore Ravens are having is that I think we're going to see Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the field together a lot more for the Baltimore Ravens. Last season, Rashad Bateman played in 16 games for the Baltimore Ravens, and he only accumulated 367 receiving yards. And keep in mind, this was with Mark Andrews last season, Chris, only playing 7 games. And we know that how much of a target machine
You don't got to remind me, if I was on his over and he got hurt.
yeah. And again, he's the favorite target for Lamar Jackson. And Isaiah Likely, I think, is going to have a bigger role as well. We mentioned Zay Flowers. He had a great season last year. I think he's going to take a step up for this Ravens offense. So when you're looking at, the Baltimore Ravens options, Rashad Bateman is more down the list than he's up there for this team, whether it's in the passing game or whatever the case might be, right? And I know Derrick Henry can also be involved in that passing game, but I think for me, when I take a look at it, Rashad Bateman will get his looks, but I just don't think he's going to accumulate the yards because I feel like for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, it's going to be Zay Flowers, it's going to be Mark Andrews, it's going to be Isaiah Likely, and then it's probably going to be Rashad Bateman for the Baltimore Ravens. But again, you just take a look at the numbers throughout his career for Rashad Bateman. They just haven't been there. Like I mentioned last year, he only had 387 receiving yards in 16 games that he played. His prior couple years, they also haven't, the numbers really haven't been there for him. His rookie season, he only played in 12 games. Maybe if we had played in other games, he would have gotten over this number. He had 515. And then in 2022, he only played in 6 games, had only 285 receiving yards. So health has also been a problem for Rashad Bateman as well. So I need to see him do it before I can back him here. And again, with the options now the Baltimore Ravens do have, I'm going to take the under for Rashad Bateman. It's a low number, but again, it's low for a reason for Rashad Bateman. So under 550.5 receiving yards here, Chris, for Mr. Rashad Bateman of the Ravens.
Love it. We expect the Baltimore Ravens to continue to run the football. I mean, you don't bring in Derrick Henry for nothing. And the numbers back it up as well. This isn't a pass heavy team in the first place, right? We got to remember that, right? Last year, the Ravens were their pass rate on first down was 47.9, which put them bottom 10. But guess what their run rate was? 58.2, 58.6, which put them second. They ran the ball the second most time on first down. They also ran the ball the fourth most times on second down. On first down. And then, of course, so they're top 5 in running the ball on first down and second down. They're also top 5 in running the ball on third down, because they're just stacked. And all of that just goes into everything that you kind of mentioned. We're wanting to favor Rashad Bateman here. Mark Andrews, as long as he can stay healthy. Honestly, even if he may not stay healthy, he didn't stay healthy last year. Rashad Bateman went under this number that he's 0-3 to right now. Yep. So I like this one. If I was looking for a receiver to kind of fade too, I didn't quite get there to pull the trigger, but I do like Rashad Bateman going under here. I'll take that. I also think what you mentioned about them bringing in that heavy 2 tight end set, just to add a few more blockers for, Derrick Henry out the backfield is something that we're probably going to see a little bit more as well. We also got to remember there's a new offensive coordinator over there as well.
Yeah.
New offensive coordinators. I know defensive coordinators all took jobs, and they head coaches and defensive coordinators other places as well. Some of those linebacker and DB coaches. So yeah, it's going to look a little different, but I don't expect it to look too much different for Rashad Bateman this upcoming year.
Yeah, and again, for this Ravens team, it's like you lay the numbers out there beautifully about how they just have that run first approach, and when you have a scrambling quarterback like we talked about at volumes with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry there now, I think that Rashad Bateman and maybe even some of the other wide receivers that are down the depth chart are probably not going to get a whole heck of a lot of looks for this upcoming season. All right, so that's 3 player props each here, Chris. I know we talked a lot about the Ravens here. We talked about the Browns. Had some Bengal props in there as well. But one team we didn't have was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think we could briefly spend some time here on this one. And, I was looking at either taking Russell Wilson right now, and I'll start with this, is that supposed to be the week 1 starter for this team. And I like taking unders on these quarterbacks that are going to be looking over their shoulder, just because Mr. Justin Fields is back there. So I really couldn't come up with a player prop for the Pittsburgh Steelers side because the numbers just kind of seemed like they were either right or just didn't present enough value for me. I looked at Najee Harris, and his number was at, I think it was like 850 and a half for his rushing yards. He's at 1,000 receiving yards in back-to-back seasons for this team. And I think they also made some changes on the offensive line there as well. But I just feel like that Jaylen Warren is also going to have a bigger role with this team as well, because he flourished last season for this team as well, whether it was in the running game or whether it was in the passing game for a guy like Jaylen Warren. So I think George Pickens is going to have a big year for this team because we know Russell Wilson still likes throwing the deep ball. And I kind of went back and looked at the target shares that the skill positions have had with Russell Wilson as a quarterback, whether it was with Seattle or whether it was with the Denver Broncos. And he loves his wide receivers because I think when I went back to a couple seasons with Seattle, you had two different wide receivers that had gotten 90 plus targets from Russell Wilson. Same thing with Denver when those guys were healthy, whether it was Courtland Sutton or whether it was Jerry Jeudy. Those guys were getting the targets from Russell Wilson. So I expect a big year out of George Pickens. I just couldn't get there with him on that. I looked at Pat Fairmouth for the under because Russell Wilson doesn't really target tight ends. But you also take a look at the depth chart for the Pittsburgh Steelers, like that wide receiver group doesn't really excite me. So I really couldn't get there. Russell Wilson would be the one look just because I know Justin Fields is, itching to get out there to prove himself as well. So I really didn't have anything for Pittsburgh there. But did you have any general thoughts for Pittsburgh? Anything that you were looking at there?
No, it's really difficult. This kind of goes back to our first episode where, we're talking about teams like, like the Vegas Raiders, right? It's like if we don't know who, is going to be that long-term quarterback, because we do know that there could be a quarterback change pretty early in the season as well. It's really difficult to want to key in on some of those skill position players because, as you mentioned, I can make, pretty much the same argument for a lot of what you said as well. Najee Harris is somebody who, you expect us to have the ball a lot. I also think, with Pittsburgh bringing in Cordell Patterson, probably just wanting to get down the field a little bit more and try to, make a little bit more, plays in the special team so they don't set themselves up, because we remember their offense really, really struggling last season and, being in some really dogfighter games just because their defense was, really, really keeping them, keeping other teams in check. But I have no idea what this Pittsburgh team is gonna look like at the end. I just know that, as long as Mike Tomlin is coaching them, they're gonna have a shot like they always do. So yeah, I couldn't really get there with the data props as well. You mentioned tight end. Numbers are, I wouldn't even say inflated. I would say that they are, I guess he's projected to do a little bit better because, quarterback play is supposed to be a little bit better, but we're not even sure that, if Justin Fields was the quarterback, what he did with Cole Kmet last season, was pretty cool. But we don't know if, like you said, if he's going to play, and if he does, when he'll take over for Russell Wilson. So I didn't get there. Pittsburgh was a team that's kind of icky to me. I kind of just stayed away from them altogether.
Yeah, I think that for Steelers, it may just be that you want to back them early in the season because, if you go and look at their schedule after their bye week, man, it is really, really daunting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm sure we'll talk about more of them during the regular season, but I just, noticed here that we didn't really have much, probably for the same reasons for the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as it comes to their season player props. Chris, anything else for honorable mentions? Anything else that you were considering before we do get to best bets?
Nah, I think we both did a pretty good job, but I don't know. It's a couple question marks here. Like I'm just not 100% sure what Pittsburgh is going to be doing with, how does bringing in someone like Arthur Smith change this team as well, coming over from, we remember that Atlanta offense. We talked about it. Like sometimes it's more fun to watch paint dry. It's difficult. I think the ones that we were able to nail down, I really like the three that I mentioned, but I also really love your under on Deshaun Watson passing yards, and I'm probably going to end up tailing you there. I think those are solid. Like I really, really enjoy those looks, so I'll just play those four and keep it there. What about you?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. I know some of the things that I was looking at as far as Baltimore Ravens skill positions. Mark Andrews, you had him last season. He's been all reliable, right? But it was just, again, the theme always when we talk about the season player props, it's injuries, right? And like one injury can derail everything for you when you talk about these player props. But as intriguing and fun as this division is, when we talk about just winning and losing and teams that can step up and things like that, I just, the ones that I found, and I'm glad we agreed on the Lamar Jackson one. But other than that, like I didn't want to force it here. I think the ones that we gave out, I think are really, really solid for this division. We still have 5 more divisions to get through, so I didn't want to force anything here. But I think the ones that we give out were really, really solid looks here for, for this AFC North division. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up here with best bets, man. I'll let you lead it off. What do you got for your best bet for the AFC North?
So we'll go. We'll go Burrow. If I want to go Burrow, I really do. I was, just a little hesitant. Just not really wanting to pull the trigger. Oh man, like Burrow could go down. But you know what? I'm putting all that aside. I'm putting it in the air. Burrow has a season where he's healthy, and is, like I said, if he's healthy, I think he goes over these 27.5 passing touchdowns. If not, gets to 32, 33 passing touchdowns, something that we've seen him do before. I mentioned 34 and 35 in back-to-back seasons a couple years ago. Yeah. Still have, in a very elite, skill set around them as far as playmakers, dumping it down to running backs, getting it out to his wide receivers and letting them make plays, taking a big shot down the field. I failed to mention this earlier, but and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I want to say Cincinnati was top 10 in pass rate for first down and second down. So, this is a team that even with Joe Mixon last season, relied heavily on Joe Burrow and just getting the ball out, even with Jake Browning coming in there, as a backup. So I like Joe Burrow to spread it out. We also mentioned them losing DJ Reader and, how much that affects their defense. So they could be in a bit of trouble, with being able to stop teams. And we'll see if they, can replace him or not. But for all of those reasons, I'll go Burrow here, over 27.5 passing touchdowns, just praying for a healthy season for him.
It also goes back to what we talked about the MVP award market when we did that episode, that Joe Burrow was, I think, 9-1 right now for MVP, and one of the, I think, top 3 or top 5 for sure to win MVP. And obviously it's a little bit correlated that, again, if you think that he's going to have a big season and possibly win the award, he's going to have 30 plus passing touchdowns for this team. And a lot of it is predicated on obviously staying healthy, which he hasn't been able to do, at least 2 of the 4 years that he has been in the league. But hopefully, the calf injury that he was dealing with last year and the wrist injury he has passed, because again, with this wide receiving group that they do have for the Bengals, you need a guy like Joe Burrow back there to really utilize his weapons there. And again, just rack up the yards. And more importantly, for our best bet here, for the passing touchdowns for Joe Burrow. I'll keep it simple here for my best bet. We both agreed on it, Chris, and it just makes too much sense for Lamar on his rushing yards. And I know we talked a lot about Derrick Henry on this episode and that how he's going to make a difference for this team in the backfield because they've been decimated by injuries. But I think Lamar is still going to utilize his legs for this team. And I think that running that read option with Derrick Henry back there, I think that's going to be huge for this team for this upcoming season. So it's not like we're asking him to do something that he hasn't done before in a short amount of time, right? And I think that the 2 years that he played, only 12 games, he still got over this number before he left for the rest of the season and missed those games there. So, he shed that 25 pounds. I think that he's still going to be able to utilize his legs. And Lamar has to go out and do Lamar things. And you don't want to change who Lamar Jackson is. I know that there's always been talk about his ability to throw the football, but Lamar is the best when he's utilizing his legs and improvising it and making, defenders miss when he's, getting in the open field. And I think that's a great thing about Lamar Jackson. So best bet for me for the AFC North, Lamar Jackson over 675.5 rushing yards to wrap it up here for the AFC North division. All right, so that is 3 divisions down, 5 more to go, approaching the halfway point here for our season player props. But Chris, anything else you want to mention here before we go our separate ways?
Nah, man, just this was fun. I really enjoyed this AFC North division, and I'm excited for NFC North on Thursday. So make sure you guys tap back in with us and see what me and Munaf are kind of projecting and predicting for the NFC North as well. And as always, best of luck on your action, whatever you're betting, MLB or whatever you're betting right now. And until the next time, we'll catch you guys later.
Yeah, just a little news and a tease to the AFC North division. Vikings quarterback JJ McCarthy is expected to undergo knee surgery that will determine how much time he will be sidelined. So, yeah, we'll talk about that more in detail when we come back on Thursday and talk about the NFC North division. Another great division to talk about. These North divisions are really, really intriguing. especially with the quarterback play that they do have there. All right. Again, like a reminder, mention 3 divisions down here. If you haven't already gone back and listened to the first 2 that we did, the AFC West and the NFC West, great time to go back and do that. And again, obviously here with the AFC North division, we'll be back Thursday for the NFC North. Like I mentioned, if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel for the Propcast, please go ahead and do so. We'll be here live every single week for the regular season for our player props weekly, whether it's for primetime games or whether it is going to be the Sunday games where the bulk of the schedule is. So you can look out for us then as well. If you're listening to us on audio, wherever you do get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple, whether it's on Spotify, wherever the case might be, do us a favor, leave us a rating and review. It would definitely help me, definitely help grow the show here for the Propcast. All right, like I mentioned, we'll be back Thursday. We'll talk to you guys then. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.